Hey Footnoted fam,
It's Amina
and Nafisa. We're so glad you're here. Welcome to
to
Footnoted.
Footnoted.
Okay, so hello listeners. Welcome. Hey Amina.
Hey, how's it going?
Going well, it's going well. Well, actually, we're in our second week of 2L, so we're acclimating to being on like summer vibes to like getting back to school vibes, which is a little bit exhausting. It's definitely another learning curve. You think we would have mastered this by now, but we
Yeah,
haven't yet.
I'm behind already. It's been
Me
2 days of class.
too. Me too. But we can laugh about it. We can laugh about it now because we know or we have it in our hearts that we'll be able to catch up, and the feeling of never being completely on top of everything will just be an omnipresent feeling, which is a good segue into what we're going to be talking about today, which is imposter syndrome.
Imposter.
And the reason why I say it's a good segue is because when you start off in law school, as I've said before, there is an insurmountable amount of readings to do. And if you're doing it alone, or even if you're doing it with a study group, you can feel behind. And that can lead to you thinking, oh my goodness, am I cut out for this? Can I do this? And will I be successful here? And you will get through it, but it does all harken back to the feeling of imposter syndrome. And if you don't know what imposter syndrome is literally that you, whatever setting that you occupy, whether it's professional or it's academic, that you are an imposter in that setting. That somehow, despite all of the adversity that you have gone through or all of the hard work that you've accomplished, you still are not supposed to be there, but others are worthy of being there. But by some virtue, our brains just tell us that we are not. And of course, this is more prevalent in certain communities, more prevalent amongst women, maybe most prevalent within like underserved communities or traditionally underserved communities that are occupying spaces that have maybe not been held for them. And that is the same case in law school. And even if you're not from a traditionally underserved community, like the pace of law school is so intense that, it's normal to have feelings of, can I even do this? Am I cut out for this? And automatically our brains kind of go to this place of, we're not cut out for us versus the problem, which is maybe they're just trying to force us to learn a little bit of a lesson that like teamwork makes the dream work, or maybe it's just hard and we have to figure out how to work the problem. So that being said, today's episode is about imposter syndrome and how we were able to overcome it, how it kind of manifests during like 3 stages, would you say, Amina? Like
Yeah.
the beginning of law school, you're like, oh my gosh, should I be here? Then assignments come along and you're like,
Oh gosh.
wait, 3 weeks or 4 weeks of intense lecturing, can I even do this assignment? And then exams come.
Oh
And you're
gosh.
like, wait, really? No, seriously, someone please tell me if I can do this. And then hold on, the final hurrah of during exams. And then
Yeah.
really you're like, no, I don't think I can do this. And then there's a like it subsides and you're like, you know what, I am so tired, I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah.
That's my story. We'll get into it, but I'm gonna let's talk about like imposter syndrome at the beginning of law school. I don't know, do you want to kind of elaborate on maybe your experience, like when we started out? Or
Yeah. I think what we've talked about before was it started actually before law school for us. It was the moment we got in that we were like, is this a mistake? What happened? What's going on? And that obviously is the worst because, as we said, our applications went through all these people to determine we belong there, yet we still had that feeling of, is this a mistake? Are you sure what's going on? And so I think for me personally, and I'm guessing for you as well, it started then, which was almost the beginning of last year when I found out I got in. And then you take the summer off or work or do whatever you want. And then when we came into school, same thing. It was, what the heck did I get myself into? Am I sure this is correct? And I found that because I come from a science background, I didn't know how to study per se for essay based things. So law school exams are pretty much essay based, and in science they were all multiple choice. Some were short answer, but it was a lot of multiple choice. So it's figuring out, okay, how am I going to make notes? Because that's completely different from undergrad, regardless of the program. How you're going to make notes in law school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was just like, okay, I have 200 pages of reading per course each week. Some of this stuff, no idea, never heard of it. What the heck is a precedent? And so I was just sitting there like, okay, I don't know if this is the right thing for me. And it wasn't until I guess it was our first assignment, and even with that assignment, those assignments are just 100%, no matter if you even have a law background, none of us knew what we were doing. And so I think
Absolutely.
everyone had imposter syndrome. And it wasn't that we were like, oh, we don't belong here. It was just, what the heck are we supposed to do? How are you telling me to write a notice of motion, but saying, don't look it up, just write it. And we're just like, what do you mean? Where's this knowledge supposed to come from? So I
Mm-hmm.
think my beginnings was, in a way, just what did I get myself into, and can I do this?
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Nafisa?
Okay, so my my experience is a little bit of a mix of emotions because I think that there was an element of pomposity on my end because I came, like, I was working full time before I started law school and I didn't take a break. Girl, tell me why I didn't take a break. I should have taken a break. I thought I could handle it. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
thought that, like, I'm going to keep working, I'm going to keep moving forward. Once I get to school, I've been in school before. I've worked long hours before. I know like what it's like. I had no idea what was coming to me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think because of that, once things really started ramping up, I just became extremely, extremely humbled
Yeah.
and realized like, oh yeah, I've been humbled like in about like a solid week. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Was not expecting this to be this way. I was like, okay, like maybe I can hack it. And then again, as you mentioned, the first assignment came
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, I literally have no clue like what to do, who I should talk to, what I should ask, what this even means, what this
Yeah.
like it was so foreign to me. And so I will say like I did work what I think in my brain, and maybe you can contest like hours on that assignment, really
Yeah.
like hours and hours and hours on assignment, only to receive
Oh no.
not the most stellar mark. It was fine, but it wasn't like stellar. And that again was when I was like, if this is going to be the way it is for the rest of the year, where I'm pouring my heart and soul into figuring out something that I have no idea what to do, and I'm getting it back and it's not even right, like at all,
Yeah. Yeah.
or like not even exactly what was being sought after, or then like I literally don't know if I can do this. Like I do remember distinctly having a conversation with my dad being like, if this is the way it's going, like I don't know if this is, I don't know.
Yeah.
And like constantly being like just like classically, you're doing well. You're doing well. You're doing so well. Look at you. Great job. And honestly, I
Amazing.
kind of, yeah,
Talented.
doing well,
Beautiful.
sweetie. I needed that. I did. Because even like you really need that reinforcement.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you've ever kind of like gone through that like with a friend or like a family member where you just like you just need reinforcement. Like I don't want any advice.
Yeah.
I don't want like you to tell me like what I should or shouldn't be doing. Like I literally just want you to reinforce that like I'm doing okay and that like I still belong. But yeah, like those initial assignments, and I think I can really identify because I've heard it from other students too, because there's a participatory aspect in class too,
Oh
where
yes.
there are people who are just really confident in what they have to say, have like a ton of opinions, like are able to use jargon that maybe you've never heard of. And I know that this is particularly a soft spot for our science our science undergrads who might not even have been privy to some of the language that some people are using, or like some of the issues that some people are bringing up. And so it can be like really difficult for them to navigate. And even myself, like I have an arts background, but I was just like, oh, like while I'm very talkative on the podcast right now and with you, I'm gonna like it's like jarring to see so many people who are just like willing to let you know their opinions and like be really staunch in them, and like sometimes you don't even have an opinion because you don't know what the issue is, you know? I don't know. Like, how did you feel about like about that kind of component too? Like not being, yeah.
I think I was the same way. Personally, I have this thing where I believe that it's okay not to know things. You can
Mm-hmm.
say, I don't know. That's a
Yeah.
perfectly valid answer. And my biggest pet peeve is people who talk without knowledge, who just say things to say things. And
Mm.
so,
There's a lot of
yeah,
that.
because I didn't have that knowledge, I wouldn't say things because I was like, why would I speak and just try and make something up? Because profs know you don't know anything, so there's no reason to try and prove yourself. There's no reason to just say something to say something. And so I was always, I would listen if I had an opinion and then I felt confident in that moment, then I would say something. But because again, I had a science background and quite a few of our peers had like human rights background or backgrounds in law where they worked. So they
Mm-hmm.
knew a little bit more than people who hadn't had that background. It is,
Mm-hmm.
yes, a little intimidating, and you're sitting there like, should I have studied something? Should I have read during the summer? Am I
Mm-hmm.
behind? Which you're not. But
Mm-hmm.
in that time, you feel okay. This is what it's going to be like, and also there's that. It's a myth, I think, but the thing of people saying, "Oh, you're competing against everyone." So then that comes in, and you're like, "Oh
Mm-hmm.
shoot, now these people are going to get better grades than me because they
Mm-hmm.
already have this background." And I know that when I was doing assignments, especially, and I would get like just B's, and I was
Mm-hmm.
so mad because I would put in so much work, and I was like, "Why am I not getting an A minus? Why am I not getting an A? What's going on?"
Yeah.
And I remember getting my first. It was a yeah, my first A on an assignment, and I literally opened up my phone because it comes on an app and you just like, it's very dramatic. You swipe to the right and then, or to the left, and then your grade comes up. So I remember swiping and it was an A. And my siblings were around me to go, finally, my effort has been
Is
acknowledged.
being, yeah, 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 yeah.
Because I was like, I felt I was putting so much work, so much effort, doing everything, but I couldn't get that A. And again, that A isn't everything, but when you put in so much effort and you know other people are getting it, and some people you talk to are like, oh, I just spent 1 hour and it got an A, and you're spending like five, six trying to get that, you feel that imposter syndrome coming up of like, why
I
can't I do
literally know
that?
no one. I'm so sorry if someone said I spent an hour on this and I got an A. They suck. If you're listening and you know who you are, that's abhorrent. Never say that to someone. Thank you. Sorry, proceed.
But yeah, no, I feel, I mean, granted, that was it. That's just who, there's some people who you're going to meet who
Yeah,
are
that's true.
effortless in things. And I used to be like that with different things. And so I get that frustration. And especially in law school when there's only so many A's you can get and someone is just getting all those A's. And you're just like, hey, just share, please. Just one. That's all I want. But
Yeah.
I think that's another thing is you even though you know what you're doing because you're not getting that grade, it kind of perpetuates that feeling of imposter syndrome of like,
Hmm.
I'm doing my best and I'm still not getting the results. So then you feel, okay, is this right? Am I still good enough? And then you hear again, the first year marks are everything. First year marks are going to get you your jobs. And so everything is just piling on and you're just like, okay, well, I guess we'll see how it goes. And I don't think that imposter syndrome really ever goes away. To some it might, but I think in different scenarios it can. But overall, like I still feel the same way because I have 3Ls in my class now, and they're all like, I learned this in my 2L course last year, and I was like, oh great, they're already ahead of us. So now I have to like figure
Catch
out
up.
how to yeah catch up with them. But yeah.
Honestly, like aside from grades too, which is like a whole other thing that I while I understand and think that they're really important, I kind of shirk the narrative that they're everything. Like aside from, not getting the grades that you want immediately and questioning yourself, I think there's also this like pervasive culture within law school of, while people are participating, people like also being know-it-alls, right? Like
Yeah. Oh gosh.
saying that they're not struggling at all or saying that things are easy when they're not. And that is just like something I just like don't vibe with.
Yeah.
Like,
Like just keep it to yourself, please. We really don't
yeah,
care.
yeah, and I guess like everyone has their own coping mechanisms too.
Mm.
So, in addition to that, I hold space and I hold grace for those people who, you know, might find it really easy. Mom and dad went to law school, so you're able to
Mm.
reference, the shared drive of like, practical law items or whatever. You have a sister that, like, cool, like, shout out to you for, saying that you took an hour to do this assignment. Like, okay, cool. But it can really throw people in a spiral.
Yep.
And so I think it's really important, if you are someone who is really excelling or is not finding this process to be as painstaking as you thought it would be, phenomenal. But, like, put on that humility hat for a second too and help someone out. If you have, like, a legacy of lawyers within your family, that's great. Or whatever area of practice or subject matter area, like, help someone out who might not have that background, because I do think that there's such a lack of humility as law students sometimes. And I think that, like, our generation of lawyers can be the ones to break that and have that be, like, represented in the new generation of lawyers who more often than not, like, have to have, like, a client focus and a client centered approach. Like, once you become a lawyer and you're serving people, like, you have to be people focused, and
Yeah.
people don't vibe with people who are not don't have any humility in that aspect. So yeah, I mean, grades struggle, like, your peers appearing, this is quote unquote, because people are not always telling the truth. And that, again, like, that is the way some people cope, especially because it can be really jarring to be, like, to excel
Yeah.
academically for your whole life and then not all of a sudden, because the content is hard, the subject matter is hard. So if you are a 1L, if you are going through that just in your life, the biggest, like, takeaway and the biggest way that you can, like, get over that obstacle is just by being consistent. Like, everybody goes through imposter syndrome, and things are really difficult, whether you're in law school or you're picking up something new. Like, naturally, things are hard. My dad always used to give me a really good analogy of when I was a kid. Like, I would be like, Dad, it's so hard, like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And he'd be like, Nafisa, let me just tell you a story about when you couldn't walk. Do you
Oh.
think you just got up and started walking? And I was like, no. And he's like, no, you didn't. It took you months to figure it out, and you fell a million times. But then that one time, and I'm like, oh my God, Dad, okay, yeah, you're right. You're totally right. But, think, like, things are hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, with all that being said, I went on a rampage. I went on a rant, but I just continue to be consistent, and, like, continue to work at it, because whether you're getting success through academically, or the success to you just means completing the assignment, like, that's cool too. That's cool too. At least you tried.
Yeah. Well, I remember we had an assignment for admin last semester, so beginning of this year. And I remember not understanding it at all, trying to
Yeah.
figure it out. So I was on a call with one of my friends trying to figure out the referencing, and I was like, this still doesn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was due at, I think it was due at like 9 or something, 11,
Yeah.
sometime before midnight, thankfully. And I was still not done it around an hour before, or 2 hours before it was done. And I was freaking out. And I never felt this way about an assignment before. Usually when I submit one, I'll feel, okay, yeah, this is okay. I did what they asked me to do, and now it just
Right.
depends on what I get. But this assignment, I was like, I still have no idea what the heck is being asked of me. And I forget what the assignment was, but it was like writing some kind of defense for reinstatement of refugee appeal or something like that. There's a certain term for it. Anyway, I ended up submitting it, and I was so upset when I submitted it. And I was like, that is the worst assignment I have ever submitted. And I wanted to cry, and I was like, I'm going to fail this assignment because I literally have no idea what the heck I just wrote. And then I got the assignment back like 2 weeks later. I was so terrified of opening that grade because I was like, I am going to fail. And, like, granted, yes, I understand how to deal with failure, but it's just like, it's frustrating because I like figuring things out, and I like at least being able to be able to say that, okay, I tried my best. And I did try my best on this. It was just, I didn't understand what I was doing, and I don't like that feeling. So when I got my grade back, I think I got like a 75 or something on it. And that was one of the better grades in the course.
Yeah. Yep, that's good.
and I was like, what the heck? Like, what? And because I know there's people who spent hours longer than me, or even shorter. There's actually people I talked to who spent less time than me, had
Mm-hmm.
more references, and were like, oh yeah, I understand this, blah, blah, blah. And they did worse than me. And so I was just like, what the heck? Like, what is this? And it turns out I did know what I was doing. I just didn't process all the all what I've learned and what I understood. And so that
Mm-hmm.
was another form of imposter syndrome of me not recognizing, oh yeah, you
Underestimating
do know
yourself.
what's going on. Yeah, and underestimating what I can do. And I remember like up until I got that grade, I was so mad and I was like, nobody asked me about this assignment. Don't ask me how I did. And I remember my parents will always say, oh, did you submit your assignment? Did you submit your assignment? And I was like, yes, don't ask me. I don't know what I
Mm-hmm.
wrote. Don't talk to me about it because I was so upset.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that feeling is going to be something even as we enter as practicing
Workforce.
lawyers
Yeah.
because we've heard like articling students, people who don't have the IPC or who aren't able to do practical components that are offered at different law schools, they struggle because they don't know what to do. But now they're an articling student or they're a practicing lawyer and they have to go to their supervisors and ask, hey, I've never seen a contract in my life. How do I do this? And so I
Mm-hmm.
can only imagine that as a law student, it's much less stress than being a practicing lawyer because there's even more expectation on you. But even that feeling as a law student is not fun at all.
No, it's really not, but it's one you learn honestly to get comfortable with.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's like very uncomfortable, comfortable, but yeah,
yeah,
I
like
agree.
I mean, I'm not seeking it
Yeah.
by
Oh
any
no.
means, and it's always really great to feel prepared and to feel like you know exactly what you're getting into. But like life is always going to throw you curveballs, so
Mm-hmm.
like you really do have to get comfortable with like not knowing everything. And to be quite frank, like even when you are a practicing lawyer, you're never going to know all areas of law expertly, which is why like even in ethics they tell you, you know, if you have a client that comes to you with an area of law that you're not, you know, super exposed to, it's your ethical duty to reach out to someone who is and to tell your client that this is not my area of expertise and I have to reach out to someone. And if they're willing to rock with you after that,
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal. But, you know, like, so even in those aspects too, we recognize that while we have this like wealth of knowledge, while we're being taught certain things, like we're never going to know everything completely. And
Yeah.
like law school is kind of designed to like show you that lesson in a hard way, even by like the grading scheme, which is like you
Mm-hmm.
can, you know, you're never gonna know everything because you're just like because we only have a certain amount of A's and a certain amount of B's and blah blah blah. So yeah, like this feeling, it's the worst, but you name it and you can just kind of get through it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
knowing that you do belong somewhere and that it might take you a little while to become acclimated is all about like giving yourself some grace and some space.
Yeah.
And if you can, like talking to a family member or a friend about it, if you're able to find a mentor or reach out to someone who even in your career services office or like a school support about like what's
Mm-hmm.
going on, if you don't feel like you have access to, you know, a mentor or something like that, like your feelings are very valid and I'm sure they'll let you know exactly what we are, which is like it never goes away, but it becomes manageable. I was gonna bring up, and do you remember feeling it? I remember feeling imposter syndrome like acutely during exams.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I think it's because you spend all this time prepping and then you're like, oh, now I have to apply the law, so I have to think like because they tell you think like a judge or think because you have to think neutrally, impartially, or think like a lawyer, and you're just like,
What
hold
is
up,
that?
yeah, what does that even mean? Like
Yeah.
I barely have training for any of this.
Yeah,
So then
yeah,
you're putting yourself in a position analyzing the law, being like, sure, maybe this is what this means, and just putting it on the paper, and you're like, okay, I guess that's it. I guess I
yeah,
spent 4 months just to write this, and Lord knows if it even makes sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I would say like for me, I am not like a natural exam taker. Like I
Mm-hmm.
thrive in an essay format,
Mm.
which is not an exam, but it's not the same, it's not the same level of like it's just a different way of testing your knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And so automatically when I had 4 out of 5 exams, yeah, four exams out of 5 classes, automatically like I was already like in a state of distress because
Oh.
I was like, oh my gosh, like this is gonna be really intense for me. And then being scared about how I was going to be able to like apply all of that, like think like a lawyer knowledge in a way that showcased that I knew what I was talking about in like a short amount of time. Like, why do we have exams like this?
Yeah.
Rude. It's so stressful. And then we had so many. And
Yeah.
like studying, like I just remember like not sleeping. Like I don't know if that was your vibe, but like that was my vibe. Like I
No,
just
I
you
sleep.
write the exam, then you have like within like 24 hours you have another one. Like the next,
Yeah.
like it was just wild.
I think I just sleep so I can ignore my responsibilities. So I would like do my exam. I was like, okay, cool. I'll do a few hours of studying. And then I'm like, you know what? I have time tomorrow. And I think that was also a way of dealing with stress, is because my
Yeah.
brain was still overthinking everything. I
Yeah.
just can't function. And I have to be like, okay, calm down, reset. You'll be able, and again, I had that trust that I would be able to do it. So I would just be like, okay, sleep, relax, you'll be okay. But that
I did
stress of,
not have that trust.
I think it might be a false trust that I've always just had with myself
That's
so that
good.
I
That's
just
good. No,
don't
that's
break
good.
down. But even I remember second semester we had a prof who shared a sample exam answer, and I remember reading it and then being like, okay, so all my exam answers were wrong last semester. I wrote them completely
LOL.
wrong because I was like, this is how you format an exam answer? Why didn't they teach
Right?
us this? Like, why weren't you showing us this? I was just like writing random nonsense. I mean, I still did well, thankfully, but I was like, that is embarrassing. I will not be writing like that again.
Yeah. Like I remember like just like literally regurgitating or not regurgitating, like f- letting everything that I knew just like flood onto the page. Like I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
really know if it was coherent. I didn't really know like what was happening. I just like let my hands like just kept going. And honestly, it did work out, but
Yeah.
yeah, like again, the I think a little bit of the stress that came along with having four exams, not being like a natural test taker or like that's not my
Mm-hmm.
preferred way of being like assessed, like really threw me for a loop. And I did have to question during exams when there were 24 hours like in between each exam,
Oh,
like can I even do this? Like I don't even know. But then feeling super triumphant when it was done. I don't know if you
yeah.
like, I was like, after exams were done, I was literally like, oh my God, I'm so happy. Like, I'm so like, this is, I don't have to think about it. I'm just going to close
Mm-hmm.
my laptop and go to sleep for the next 36 to 72
No, I
hours.
felt the same way, but I remember for contracts, I learned contracts honestly in the 2 days as I was writing my outline. I was writing
Yeah.
it. I was like, "Oh, cool! This is what contracts is," and because it was
Hmm.
just I learned by reading,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so we did the contracts exam, and I swear, like a week after all exams were done, that prof was like, "Hey guys, so marks are due in like X amount of days. Here's the exam answer for contracts," and
Oh
I was like,
my God. I remember that. I didn't even look at it because I was like, I'm not about to, I'm not
I
gonna.
told I told myself I wouldn't look at it, but then curiosity got the best of me and I read it. And after I read it, I was like, I have failed that exam.
Yeah.
My answer is nothing like this. Because what I wrote down, like I kid you not, as I was writing it down, I'm like, I'm just making up law at this point. I'm just citing things, hoping that it applies.
Yeah.
Turns out that I was right in my exam.
Yeah.
But reading it at that moment, I was like, what is this? Like, I have the exam answer, and I'm like, I didn't compare them, but I was like, I already know whatever you analyze there is not how I analyzed it. But the thing is,
Mhm.
exams also have multiple ways to answer it.
That's
So you
true.
can't just read an answer key being like, this is wrong. It's
Yeah.
just there's obviously case law that you should be hitting, but each person describes it differently. Each person
Hmm.
reasons differently. And that's the thing is, in law school, you can reason either side of a case.
Hmm.
And so just because someone puts something one way doesn't mean that they're right and you're wrong. You
Hmm.
just have to be able to justify it. And that was something that I guess also feeds into the imposter syndrome of being like, oh, wait, the answer's wrong, the answer's what, right? But it's not. The right answer is just, can you argue both sides?
Hmm.
So it's just like that just fed into it. And yeah, getting the exam answer before you get your grades back is
Oh my
not a
God. I
fun
read it
time.
after I got my grades back for sure. But
Oh.
like before I was
I
like,
think a lot of
I
people deleted the email after. They're like, nope, not looking at it. Do not email me.
stop. Oh my God. Honestly, shout out to whoever just like flat out deleted that email. I just like quietly, I looked at it and quietly shut my laptop and just like decided not even to touch my laptop for like a few hours because I knew that it would send me into a spiral.
Yeah.
But just like piggybacking off of your point, Amina, like as like as we've mentioned in the past as well, like there is not one particular way of doing things, and like things don't exist in a binary when it
Yeah.
comes to law school, which is like a blessing and kind of a little bit like a curse. Can
Mm-hmm.
be great in that like you can, as long as you arrive at as long as you're able to reason through why you made a decision, or why you've come to a certain conclusion, like you can be successful.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that, knowing and understanding that you can have diverging ideas, or the way someone does something doesn't necessarily have to be how you do something,
Yeah.
should be a testament to why like your experience and your lens is important and why it
Mm-hmm.
matters, because you're not always going to come to the same conclusion as everyone else, and that's actually good.
Yeah.
That's like celebrated. You just have to be able to think about like why. And yeah, that, I guess that's like the beauty of law school, but also it can be really hard.
Yeah. Well, figuring out that, I think one thing is that, like I previously said, is you think, oh, I have to fit one answer, and so you're like,
Mm-hmm.
what is the prof? What does the prof believe? What do you think they think is the right answer? What do you think the right answer is? When again, the right answer is however you think and however you
Yes.
argue, because that's
Mm-hmm.
also how the justice system works. When you look at judges' opinions, there's also dissents of judges who are
Mm-hmm.
saying, I do not agree with what this person said. Here's my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, and it shows you the different ways of reasoning. And so I think going into law school, definitely think of just trust that whatever your opinion is, it is valid as long as you can back it up with the fact, and as long as you can back it up with whatever you learned, even if you might think, oh yeah, this, if I argue it this way it might be better, if I did this it could have been better. Just as long as you're trying, then know that you'll be okay.
And as Amina said, like we all read the dissents. The
Yeah.
dissents are really important, actually. The dissents sometimes help change law. The dissents have like important reasoning as to
Mm-hmm.
why we have to read them and why sometimes we even reference them. Like they're just as powerful, you know? And so truly that's like a testament to why it's important that, as Amina mentioned, that you can give your opinion, and you, just as long as you're able to reason through it and provide, you know, an argument as to why you think the way you do, it can be just as useful. So like remember that when you're thinking like, oh, I didn't think about that thing like that other person, or I'm not doing something like that other person, like do what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because regardless of whether you're doing it correctly or incorrectly, like that method is still important, and you still belong wherever you are, even if you do things differently.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So to wrap everything up, if you said, do you have any advice for the 1L class of this year and future years on how to navigate imposter syndrome, or how to navigate being confident but not too cocky when they come
Mm-hmm.
into law school?
Okay, so navigating imposter syndrome, honestly, I would say nobody knows what they're doing. And because of that, try not to take everyone and yourself so seriously.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know and you mess up, okay, what's the worst that could happen? If you need to, if you're corrected, okay, like now you know. Once you stop attaching so much merit or value to instances where you might not get everything correctly, is when you're just going to feel like you can be free. You can be free to make mistakes, you can be free to be right, you can be free to be wrong. And as long as you're respectful and you're open to new ideas, I think that, you know, you can, yeah, you can just like move forward from those instances. I will say that I'm not always the best at like getting over those times where like I've been wrong or I've made mistakes, and I'm just like learning to not attach too much value to that, and that like everybody makes mistakes. Everybody gets that way. And then the keys to confidence, man, honestly, I don't know. Can you tell me? I feel like confidence for me, and I'll just speak personally, comes with like preparedness,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't always be prepared because you don't always know what's going to be thrown at you,
Yeah.
which is why sometimes you got to take the gamble and just know that, or like reinforce it to yourself that like, hey man, again, it comes with not taking things too seriously. Like, I'm going to try. if I do it, I do it. If I don't, I don't. And like, what is the worst that can happen? Like, once you stop attaching so much value to every single thing that you do and just kind of enjoy the ride and keep an open mind and listen and learn, that's when I feel like you can, I don't know, you can just be a little bit more confident and, or you can build confidence. You can start to build confidence. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just a young scholarly lady trying my best out here. What do you think? What do you think?
I agree with everything you said. And I think that just knowing it's okay not to know, and
Hmm.
you're coming into law school and no one has any expectation that you know anything. And so it's okay not to say anything in class. If someone says, hey, well,
Mm.
what, like, here's this, can someone answer that? You don't have to just put your hand up to put your hand up to gain
Hmm.
brownie points. Like, no one really remembers that except the people you annoy when you keep doing
Hmm.
that.
Oh.
And just know that you should be willing to speak with others about what's going on, because I think that really helps with navigating 1L, knowing that you're not going through this alone and everyone knows nothing. And once you finish 1L, you will still know nothing.
You still know
So
nothing.
so it's okay just to know nothing the whole
Yeah.
year, because you're going to learn as you go. You learn as you're a lawyer, you learn as you're an articling student, you learn as you're a 1, 2, or 3L. So there's no rush to make sure you remember everything, cuz I don't remember much from 1L.
You
I
know, I don't either.
remember a couple
I'm not even gonna
torts.
lie.
I
I'm not even gonna front.
remember maybe what manslaughter is. I don't know. I watch criminal shows. Maybe that's what I remember.
Oh
But
man, that's so
honestly,
funny.
yeah, like you're not going to remember a lot and you're not supposed to remember a lot, because no one
You can
can
always
remember all of
reference
that.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's things called notes and books. Lawyers don't just walk into the courtroom with everything in their brain, they bring notes.
Hmm.
So just know that you deserve to be here. You made it in for a reason and you
Yep.
will get through it.
Hmm.
It's not a process that is super daunting that's going to just try and strike you down at every minute. No, it's going to be fun as long as you embrace it, and after that it's just you make it your own. You know that, okay, I'm not alone in this. I have peers, I have other classmates who all went through the same thing. Even profs went through the same thing. They were in your
Yeah.
position. Lawyers, some of the best lawyers, they knew nothing at one point. So you will eventually get where you need to go.
Hmm. Agreed. Well, with that, I hope that was an inspirational moment, and
Yeah.
we will see you in the next one.
Yeah, that was fun. I hope
Yeah.
I hope I hope everyone knows how to manage their imposter syndrome a little bit better.
Me too. Me too. Because it's hard out here, let me tell you.